Alright, so we're back once again, and today I thought we'd go over some of the game types that might just be plain painful to experience in World of Warships. And I thought there'd be no better place to discuss these types of games than right here, right now, and share that pain with you, the viewer. We'll be going through some of the decent games where there's a back and forth gameplay between two equally powered teams, and games where that's not so much the case. You also get games where some of the players will think there's fun little mini games included within the actual game, like seeing who can get detonated the fastest or racing to see who can reach the A1 square on the minimap the quickest. All that and more awaits you, so if you want to feel a grip of emotions ranging from anger to perhaps annoyance and then agreement, or those emotions in reverse, keep watching. If not, well, you probably already stopped watching, so let's get into the actual content. Back and forth game. So first up is the back and forth game, and much like Game of Thrones, I thought I'd start with the most enjoyable type first and get progressively worse over time, or at least get to the progressively worse type of games over time. So when you get into a game like this, it truly is one of the best things about World of Warships. You have fairly balanced EDs, ships like the Holland and the Shimakaze are balanced with ships like the Daring and the Grozoi, and cruisers and even battleships are evenly balanced in terms of strength and tier. And CVs are kept to a minimum, or are non-existent completely, preferably. Now that describes the ships in this type of game and not the players. And well, any World of Warships game can have a pretty vast skill gap from player to player, kind of like the gap that exists between the Sun and the supermassive black hole it orbits at the center of our galaxy. But in games like this, that gap closes to the size of a pinhead. If there's a BB player on the enemy team that's able to one-shot that Worcester sailing full broadside 2 minutes into the game from 20 kilometers away, then rest assured one of the enemy DDs will die just as quickly at the hands of an allied DD's torpedoes that were launched with no real intent other than to reset the cooldown on them. And this will probably be the pattern for the majority of the game. A little tip, if I may, when it comes to games like this, and I guess you could apply this in general also, if you survive 5 minutes into the game on a DD, 10 minutes into the game like this on a cruiser, or 15 minutes in a battleship, it's going to be a game to remember. Because as you get later and later into the game, the noobs tend to fall away, and what's left is a feeling that every decision you make actually matters, and not that feeling that you usually get when playing individual games of World of Warships. You know, derision and self-hatred. It only gets worse from here on in. I'm personally looking forward to it, so let's go. The we're winning until we're very badly losing games. So this type of game seems pretty obvious, shall we say? Of course you're winning until you're losing, but that doesn't really tell the whole story in these types of games. Generally they start out much like the games that I mentioned just above. Everyone goes to a respective side of the map, i.e. if you spawn on the right side of the map, you move to the right flank, and vice versa for the left side. What this creates, however, is a strong side and a weak side, based solely on the number of ships going to each side. And as you'd expect, this shouldn't be much of an issue, as generally this can be applied to the enemy team also. But the main problem with this comes from the fact that if you couple a weak side with, how do I put this lightly, well below average players, well then you get the perfect storm of absolute destruction known as losing half your team in 3 minutes. And this is where the winning until you're losing game type comes into play. Because while you might be on the strong side of the map, slowly whittling the enemy team down and slowly winning and taking control of that part of the map, the other side is experiencing something similar to what New World diseases did to the Native America's population, complete destruction. And so while you might be thinking you're winning and then suddenly get slammed from your broadside for 25,000 damage by the enemy Kremlin that just appeared from nowhere, and while you simultaneously have to think about a few things, one being, what the hell is that thing doing so close to me? 2 being, where the hell did the other half of my team go? 3 being, how the hell am I going to angle to 2 sets of ships 90 degrees apart? And finally 4, why the hell does it actually feel like hell in this game? Well, the last one is pretty easy. It's because you're just being set on fire 4 times and have no damage gone. So enjoy! I told you it's only going to get worse from here on in. Remember, you can click that exit button at any time. Moving along. the GAM. I named this one the GAM. I was going to name it Game, but I thought just like this type of game, it's going to end prematurely. Other naming options included Why Bother, This Is Pointless, I Regret Pressing the Battle Button, and I'm Done for the Day, but to name a few. I've mentioned these games before. These games are kind of like that supermassive black hole that I mentioned a little bit earlier. They suck you in when you press the battle button with the slim hope that maybe, just maybe, this game will be different and will be a back and forth type game, and not a winning until you're losing type game. But much like what happens when you throw metal into a black hole, your friendly ships are going to very quickly compress into a little ball and sink to the bottom of the ocean when exposed to the enemy on the opposite side of the map. Well, you might be thinking that this is no different to the types of games I mentioned previously, and you'd be partially right. Although, in GAMS, you very quickly realize that you stumbled into something that you really probably shouldn't have. Like walking down a dark alley at night and suddenly 10 dudes start approaching you from both directions. And much like that, any hope you have getting out of this game or situation and not being beaten incredibly badly is pretty unlikely. Yeah, that bad. So this was a quick little summary of some of the game types that you'll experience while playing World of Warships. I'm sure there's a lot more to be talked about in respect to the game types, but I just had a game where I managed to hit 8 torpedoes in Ostergötland before the 5-minute mark in the game, and we still crumbled into pieces like a very dry piece of pie. Which pretty much sums up some of the games you'll be having this holiday season. Enjoy, and I'll see you all in the next one.